Hi guys, Aza here, back with another video. So, this time around it's Marathon. They have a server slam this weekend, so might as well just check it out. And as expected, it's it really do feel like another extraction shooter all over again. Like I I don't really think there's anything much different here, except for maybe if you manage to find some very cool mods for your guns, but then you you might as well just keep those very good stuff on and those very good stuff in your backpack again because bringing them out is going to be a slaughter fest, I suppose. There's several times already when I actually wanted to bring out my own loadout, and each time is just, well, team wipe most of the time, unfortunately. And yeah, I lost my gear over and over again. And because this extraction shooter is much more focused on PvP, it do be more risky for you to bring out better gear, like better mods or stuff like that. You know, just roaming around and doing some missions. And there is even some points where I don't really think we can even do missions at all because players who are in my team is literally seeking for killing other players or something, and it just does not feel like it's always be always be that good round all the time. The only time when it's actually a good round is when we get to face off other UESC enemies, I guess, which is what they call the PvE enemies. The problem is more like, well, if you are alone and you're facing against the UESC, if there's more than 2 units, you're probably gonna get cooked very easily, unfortunately, because the damage from their guns is similar to that of a normal player, who is you probably would mistake a rook player as a UESC enemy as well, because the rook could have been a solo player just wanted to just play as a rook. The rook is like a very weird shell. By the way, shell is actually the body that you transfer your consciousness to. That means if this body or this shell somehow dies, you don't really die per se. It's just that you lose the connection to this shell, I guess, and you lose all your items. That's the concept of this entire extraction shooter. That's why it explains in lore that, in the sense that your shell will be always be rebuilt all over again every single time we start a new mission. So it made sense in terms of lore. But the problem is more like I don't really see any interesting bits about this other than yet another extraction shooter feeling. Sure, some people actually like are even argue like the gunplay is pretty decent, the sound and atmosphere of the game and the sound of the game is pretty immaculate, and the style that they're trying to show up here, which is very very neo futuristic kind of body horror kind of cinematics. I don't. I think some people might actually get some epilepsy as well if they play this game. So I would suggest people who are much more easy to prone to epilepsy or just flashing lights. I would suggest you guys maybe not play this game too much because there's just way too much neon likes, weird artifacting videos in different resolutions and stuff like that, and just some very weird insects and animals, despite being like a game that is literally focusing on basically just you being an empty shell. I don't understand why there's real animals involved somehow in the cutscenes and in the loading screens. It just doesn't really make sense at all. But okay, if you really want to make hornets or bees look kind of menacing or something, okay, sure, I guess. But it's weird, I suppose. But it is what it is, man. The developers really have put all their heart into designing the entire motif of this game, and the entire theme of this game is executed pretty well. The problem comes in when you are playing the game. Well, firstly, it's either you meet a bunch of uh, powerful UESC enemies, some that accidentally might take down one of your teammates, and you are usually able to, rebound from that issue usually. But when you're facing with other players, things become very, very hectic because every other player is just another group of it's another like shells again. So that means you also need to understand what their skills do, what they can do, how to actually bypass enemy defenses, or how do you try to prevent yourself from getting killed by stealthily by a recon kind of a class or something like that, which always uses a knife in close combat because it's a melee stealth killer or some sorts, and there's a lot of other gimmicks that you need to remember in order to counter other players whenever you're playing against others. I guess it is probably decent in terms of like the PvP element, especially like looking at how weird the time to kill is and how low it is. You do get killed pretty easily, and once you're down, there's you rarely have chances that you rarely have any chance for you to actually revive yourself somehow, because I don't really think there is an item yet that allows you to do that, because whenever you were down by UESC, they will try to capture you, or just stick some wires into you or something, which is pretty cool, I guess. And however, if you really want to recover from that, there's no way for you to recover from down at all. So being down is a very, very heavy kind of a punishment for you misplaying the game, I guess. But the problem is, I just find out that you have free loadouts, and usually I would rather go out with a free loadout every single time, because, well, you constantly get free loadouts by just playing playing the completing the missions and stuff like that, and might as well just use that. And once you are in game, usually even UESC PvE enemies drop weapons. So you might as well just loot their weapon and eventually find some armors, or find some throwable items, and then find some healing items, which is much better than the temporary ones that you are using at the moment with the free loadout and stuff like that. And then eventually, if you somehow are able to successfully exfiltrate out, then sure, you get to keep every single thing. But at that point, it just makes sense for you to choose the best loadout and then just go into the mission, because at this point, the risk of losing very good guns, or the risk of losing your very, very precious or hard to find mods is just way too high. It does not make sense for you to usually go out with like a customized loadout, except if you have stockpiled a lot of them, yes. But even so, I'm like, what is the difference then between this game? I mean, in Arc Raiders, you have stations for you to craft stuff, I guess. At least there's that. In Marathon, is like, oh wow, hey, look, it's a faction system like in Warframe, but well, instead of giving you unique equipment, it's probably just another quest line again for you to complete, and just some menial tasks that you need to do whenever you are scavenging the perimeter, or other maps, stuff like that. It just, I don't really see any specialty here. I believe that this whole system and the gunplay is definitely decent, I suppose. And the problem is more like, is the world believable for you? For me, I don't really think it's that believable as a sci-fi universe, unfortunately, because people's shells look identical, and I don't really know how to tell the differences apart from each other's shell, unfortunately. And it would usually confuse you, especially because the all the shells looks humanoid. They might have their own special design in certain shells, but the problem is most of the shells just do not have a very, very unique identity that really makes them stand out as, oh wow, this is this runner, oh this is this shell, oh this is this very, very professional shell, or something like that. I don't really feel the magic, or the great feeling of awe when playing this game at all. It just feels like a gimped down Destiny 2, and I I don't really want this. Like, I mean, sure, I guess a Destiny 3 is definitely a best case scenario, but then the problem is more like, are you sure you're gonna stick with this game long term? Alright, like, I don't think so. Because if there is always a risk of PvP players going to take you down by either using sneaky methods like putting claymores at certain beginner level doors or something and just ruining your run by just headshotting you from nowhere that you probably cannot even reach or cannot even see them or have any time to react at all, or when they are interrupting you when you are fighting a lot of UESC enemies. So the problem here is that it is not as seamless or as very thought out like Arc Raiders. And for a company as huge as Bungie is, I don't think this is enough to defeat something like Arc Raiders, unfortunately. I would even bet that a lot of other extraction shooters have done whatever they have done already in the game. And because there is no uniqueness that is to be found in Marathon, I would say that it's not exactly going to worth $40 that they are asking for, especially in the future when they are going to add in a lot of cosmetic stuffs. Definitely in terms of monetization, especially their battle passes and the cosmetic stores and stuff like that is definitely going to be over monetized because they really wanted to get the money return from spending so much millions of dollars just to develop this extraction shooter again. So I don't know, man. It just looks like another extraction shooter that wanted to stand out from the rest, but in the end, nobody just can compare to the quality that is Arc Raiders, unfortunately. So who knows? If you are a guy who much more preferred a first person perspective kind of a gameplay and also prefer to have much more gunfights against other PvP players, this is a game probably might much more suitable for you, I suppose. If you're the ones who enjoy those PvP oriented games, I suppose, yeah, Marathon is probably worth it for you to try out and see if you like it or not. Not to mention that the game at least supports XESS as well. And that was actually pretty nice as well that they included a dynamic resolution target, which means that they'll try their best to change the resolution lower them whenever there is like frame rate drops and stuff like that, so that you don't really need to change the settings over and over again to make sure to find out the best setting there is. No, you can just use the dynamic resolution scaling, and I think the game does not really look any different when I tried using that setting anyways. And unfortunately the default settings they have motion blur on, so make sure to also turn that off, by the way. Yeah, other than that, is there anything special about this game? I doubt so, because I believe this is probably just another beta for you to play and experience if Marathon is actually suitable for you, and at the same time stress test their servers. And unfortunately, for my experience, is that it's not that good. In comparison with Arc Raiders, it's probably not exactly as good because I also experienced some rubber banding, which brings you out of a building when you are trying to enter because your internet just cannot really catch up and suddenly you just got rubber band back. It just doesn't really feel that good, unfortunately. For people who are extraction shooter enthusiasts, maybe it's okay for you, I guess. But for me, I think the gunplay would eventually become so toxic that it's going to be really hard to play or enjoy the game further on, because who knows if the UESC gets even more annoying, which they already are, by the way, because they can throw grenades, they can rush to you and attack you using melee or tackle you or something, which is, I mean, that's cool and all, but if you're facing other enemy PvP players who are ambushing you, that will be like a death sentence for most characters. Even the healer character does not really like able to save you or provide active heal for every single player, just as a balance measure, I suppose. But it just sucks that his ultimate is for reviving a person that's down, and it just doesn't really feel like the skills of the characters really are that unique as well. And I don't really remember each character's skills and what they can do for the longest time, unless
Always
unless
know your
maybe the,
exit.
the the ones that you have used before, like the default starting one, which is focused more on towards like defensive and offensive kind of a gameplay. They have their own boosters and stuff, and some other characters have stealth abilities on very powerful melee abilities if they are attacking enemies in the stealth mode. And there's also some other characters that is much more focused on
Warning,
uh, you know
reinforcements detected.
offensive or just moving very fast or much better movement or just threat detection, stuff like that. And it just, the problem with all these shells is not that they are not unique, it's just that it doesn't really seem like it's customizable that much. And the only thing that you can probably customize in the game is probably the guns, but you also need to find the mods. And in order for you to find the mods, you need to like explore. And when you explore, there is a chance for you to also lose all of them. So I don't know how to feel about losing every single thing whenever you lose. So even you can also fail at the tutorial, by the way. The tutorial stage is also pretty tough if you don't really heal yourself or you don't really start with a decent amount of items that you have found inside the large building. So beware of that as well. So, but at
Marking
least they give you a
opportunity.
chance to retry, I
Intercept.
suppose. However, Marathon, if this is the magnum opus of what Bungie thinks they are going to build on their franchise IPs from now on, it's just not going to be comparable to something that is like Destiny levels of popularity. And I don't really know if this is going to take off or not. I think it will depend on their launch. If their launch has good receptions, then I suppose this game can be another competitor or contender to, Arc Raiders, I suppose. Or it could have been another game for you to benchmark a lot of PC parts again, just like a lot of YouTubers, but who knows, right? The game is just on the server slam, on a beta of sorts, so hopefully they will be able to add more stuff when it launches, but at the moment, the optics for this game is just very, let's just say, playable, but not really as interesting as I expected it to be. So I don't know, man. This neo futurism, um, futuristic style of sci-fi is just, it doesn't really click with me. And unfortunately, I'll still more prefer Helldivers 2 or Space Marine 2 for all the sci-fi aesthetics, and I think those are way more pronounced and much better than the weird cyber neon style of Marathon, which is, I don't know, man. I mean, the art style is pretty unique for its kind of extraction shooter game, but yeah, I don't really think it's really that insane in comparison to Operators. And that is just going to be my review of this game. And yeah, that's it, I guess. If you like my content, you can maybe leave a like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Sayonara.